Well, the Gauteng Economic Development MEC has outlined how the province is going to reignite its economy using the National Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. The MEC is Pakstau, and he joins me now. Good evening and thanks for your time. So we've just seen part of the project Gibela that our reporter Wandiswa Ntengeto was reporting on a little earlier. What does this project entail? What's going to happen to all of these trains that are being manufactured?
Thank you very much, Kathy, and good evening. I think first it's important to acknowledge that, in fact, Gibela is one of the shining lights with regards to the success of a Black Economic Empowerment Initiative. The plant itself is at the back of procurement by the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa to procure 600 trains, which is an entire train actually, 600 trains over the next 10 years with a maintenance structure over 20 years, where you would have local industry partnering with international partners producing those trains. They are currently standing at a production line that's reached 65, which is now in the current production line of those trains that have been manufactured locally. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that, in fact, it is not just a partnership at a high level. It is not just about ownership. It is about participation throughout, in fact, the operations of the company, from senior management and the board to middle management and operations supervisors that take control of the entire value chain of the operations of Gibela. And this was unveiled a few years ago to enable this production line to start and to enable supply into PRASA. The next steps now, which are part of the engagements we had with them today, is about how do we increase local production and local suppliers into their value chain. And part of the discussions included the expansion into an adjacent site to establish a supplier development park with incubation facilities located at the supplier development park, so that we're able to increase the number of enterprises locally that participate in the value chain. It's also about ensuring that there is a particular focus and bias towards Black enterprise development and ensuring that we're able to incubate Black enterprises that participate in that value chain. And it's about ensuring that we create the skills pool that is necessary through partnering with TVET colleges so that they are able to produce the relevant skills that are necessary for that industry. So it's about empowerment along an entire value chain that focuses on producing needed rail infrastructure and vehicles for the rail networks in our country.
So when you look at these economic zones and the kind of impact that they're having on the local economies, at least where they're situated, have you been able to assess what that is right now?
Well, right now we haven't done a complete assessment of the numbers. Safe to say that we can indicate that the bulk of the employees, 90% of the employees at the Gibela Park, for example, are young people, the bulk of whom, in fact, are Blacks from the townships in the surrounding areas. It's also about the involvement of women. 46% of their participants and employees are women. And these are artisans, semi-skilled people to senior management people. But it's also about local supply industries, ranging from in the local community where you're able to create and incubate enterprises, but it's also about suppliers throughout the country. We went through the plant and they were able to demonstrate facilities that are manufactured throughout the country, whether it's steel supply from Mpumalanga, whether it's about the manufacturing of seats in KZN, eThekwini, or in fact the manufacturing of some of the elements of their steel value chain in Pietermaritzburg. So it's an entire country that benefits from these investments, and we need to calculate the benefits not just to the areas of Ekurhuleni, Gauteng. In fact, the benefits accrue to the whole of the country.
It certainly is good to see progress being made in terms of these economic zones, but we also know that when it comes to the economy in Gauteng, some of those that have suffered the most under this pandemic has been small businesses, and there doesn't seem to have been a lot of support for them. during this period?
Well, as the Gauteng provincial government, we have now been working tirelessly to ensure that we have a direct focus on small enterprise development. And this would range from business development support to financing to post-financing support for enterprises, but also in certain instances creating the necessary back office support to those enterprises that participate in particular enterprises and value chains. We are currently in discussions and in fact are finalizing an agreement with the National Department of Small Business Development and their agencies so that they complement the work that we do. One of the things we've identified in Gauteng is that we cannot and would not be able to achieve on our own. We need to be able to aggregate the resources of the public sector. So we've focused on the Department of Small Business Development and their agencies to complement the work that's done by our Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, which is an agency that focuses on small enterprise. But we're also talking about partnerships with the private sector. So we're currently in final discussions around a financing mechanism for small business, for small, medium, and micro enterprises in Gauteng. That would be a partnership between ourselves and the private sector, and we're engaged in detailed negotiations around finalizing the design and the modeling of that structure so that it's able to provide that level of support. And I'm emphasizing this because it is both about business development support, which is about helping the business from the basics of developing a business plan, translating the idea into a business, incubating certain enterprises to the point at which we're able to finance the enterprise. But we also accept that public financing is not the only mechanism. How to ensure access to equity funders. So it's about reaching out to the private sector and their role in providing equity into these enterprises.
Of course, one of the challenges that faces an entity like the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller is that they have not submitted some of their financial statements for the year 2019 to 2020. The Auditor General has flagged it. There are questions about stability at that institution, and the understanding seems to be that they're still sitting on 250 million rand that they were supposed to distribute to small businesses as part of the funds that were released during the COVID-19 pandemic in July last year.
The 250 million rand is part of the resources that I'm referring to when I'm saying we're creating a financing mechanism for small enterprise that essentially leverages of public sector contributions and is able to attract private sector contributions. So those discussions are at an advanced stage, and we hope to conclude them subject to, of course, all the legal and technical negotiations currently taking place. But I'm quite optimistic about the work that we're doing in that regard. With regards to the submission of the annual financial statements, it's important to correct, Kathy, that the annual financial statements were submitted. They were submitted late as a result of discussions that were ongoing between the AG and the entity as to how certain elements of the accounts were being interpreted. So it was an interpretation matter that ultimately led to the delay, but these were submitted at least a month after the initial submission date. That does not justify that we should find ourselves in that situation, but I thought it's important to clarify that point.
It's being described as an entity that is non-performing, especially by those who are in the opposition benches in Gauteng. How concerning is that? Because, again, you're talking about, finding mechanisms for distribution of these monies. Is this not something that should have been done last year already when small businesses needed it, and that money could well have saved some from shutting their doors?
And institutional stability is an important area of focus, particularly with regards to the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller. So one of the agreements we've reached with the board is the processing of the matter of appointment of a CEO of the agency. I had a discussion, in fact, this morning with the chairperson of the board, and I'm quite impressed with the progress that has been made to recruit a CEO for the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller. It's now going to the next levels of approval so that we're able to finalize the appointment of the CEO and stabilize the agency from the CEO cascading into the rest of the organization. I should confirm that even before I arrived at the Department of Economic Development, the process of recruiting a new board had been concluded, and a new board started in October. So we are focusing a lot of attention on that work to ensure that the institution stabilizes, it's able to achieve its objectives. I should reassure you, Kathy, and to the viewers that, in fact, over the past few months, the work that we've been doing, not just on institutional stability, but on programmatic areas of focus for the agency, is beginning to see to yield some results. As I indicated, on the finance environment, we're seeing progress, and I'm quite comfortable that the work that we're doing will be able to yield the results that we look forward to.
Gauteng Economic Development MEC, Parks Dow.